Hello, awesome resellers. So today I wanted to do a topic that I was actually in a meeting for Zoom about, and it's called boundaries. So, as resellers, there's boundaries that we can create for ourselves, as well as personal boundaries for friends and family, as well as in business. But because most of you guys are resellers, I want to talk about boundaries within reselling and how that looks like and how that plays out. So basically, as a person that sells online, you're able to know where your emotional boundaries are, your professional boundaries, and just your physical boundaries. There's so many different layers that you can see how this can play out also in the reselling community. In terms of boundaries with customers, there's some customers that might be asking you questions at 6 in the morning because they're from a different time zone, or they're people that might be asking you DMs through social media, and that might be 3 in the morning or something like that. And just knowing when to respond and when not to respond, because maybe you're tired, or maybe you shipped too many items that day and you just are exhausted to like help a person right now, and you want to help them but just not at that exact moment. It's totally fine to have these boundaries and to have these limits, because you are your own person. You have your own wants, needs, and all of those things. So you might, for instance, be a mother with like two children, and you're watching social media and you're seeing like $1,000 sales and all of that. And you know what? Your time right now is that you want to focus on your children and your family, and that is your priorities. So that is your physical boundary, to just an emotional boundary, to say, like, you know what? I'm only going to list 5 items a day when Johnny is at preschool and Cindy is sleeping at nap time. And that is your boundary. Like, you're not gonna list 50 items because some huge reseller is doing 50 items, and you just feel this kind of pressure, because now you're not respecting your emotional boundary to like set those limits for what is important to you and what your needs are. So that's an example of, like, say, boundaries with your emotions, what you want to do. Another way of boundaries is to look at it as, like, say you have like a case opened against you. I had a case opened against me, and maybe having boundaries from the customer at that moment is maybe wait a day before you respond to that customer, because you might be emotionally charged, or maybe this PayPal transaction was where the person was being dishonest, and you want to just give yourself some space, like a day before you respond to that. That is okay, because that is your emotional boundaries to wait for that response, because you want to come from a place of like being more logical instead of being more emotional and just being more charged. So that is also an example of a boundary. And the reason why you want to have these boundaries is because it sets apart you from others. And so, like, pretend that you have a gate around you. Like, say, like there's a picket fence around a house, and that picket fence is like protecting you from like what you don't like and what you are okay with. And it's okay to have this. I think also, like, from a Christian perspective, sometimes you feel like guilted, like love your neighbors as yourself, and your enemies, like treat your enemies with love. It's not saying that you should allow people to take advantage of you, and that's not being loving. It's about respecting where your space is and what you're okay with and what you don't allow, and knowing that you have your own sense of self and identity. And this is going to play out better for you if you're have this kind of boundaries modeled to you. Like, say you had parents that were really assertive with saying no to things. Like, if your parent was like, you know what, I'm sorry, I cannot attend your party, I just have this other obligation, I'm not available that day. Versus, say, a parent that was always like, okay, I'll go, and they're like, oh my god, I don't want to go. And so, like, having that model to you is an example of how sometimes you play out your own boundaries. And then also maybe even reading books about boundaries, like Towns and Cloud, ha, Townsend and Cloud has a book called Boundaries, and that book describes a lot the psychological perspective of boundaries because they're therapists. But I'm trying to implement how that plays out in the reselling community because I actually have a marriage family therapy background in terms of the education. I have not done the hours yet. And so I wanted to incorporate that with the reselling community and how that can play out for you. So emotionally distancing yourself before you respond to cases, and I'm guilty of that, is just responding emotionally charged, and then being assertive. So let me give you another example of boundaries with even with the reselling community. There was a reseller that wanted to go thrifting with me, spend time with me, and that was fine. But after a while, it was like almost every other day, and then like instead of 2 hours, maybe like 5 hours. So I had to set my boundaries and say, like, oh, I really enjoy spending time with you, but I think I could only spend time with you once a week for 3 hours, because I have to do a lot of other things. And setting that space and time and all of that emotional distance is not only healthy for you, but it's also healthy for the other person because now you're not going to be codependent and you want to have space between each other. And even knowing what is good for you that you want to do. Like, for instance, let me give you an example. Like, I think a lot of times I've set a bad example is that I work from the time I wake up to like 2 in the morning sometimes. And that is not showing the reselling community, like, you know what, my work hours are from 9 to 5, and I want to work those hours so that I could have emotional space for my husband, and I want to clean my house, and I want to do other chores, and that I've been showing through my Instagram stories that I just work 24 hours nonstop, like 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And that is a boundary that I need to set for myself, is like setting specific hours, not having to feel guilted to like shipping items the same day. I mean, we're in a pandemic, so that is also a boundary. Is like maybe you're gonna ship items. I saw somebody posted on a Reddit. They said that they're posting shipping items once a week. Please understand, because of the pandemic, respect, my business rules. And that's that person's boundary. Whereas like someone like myself had kind of weak boundaries, is that I would ship same day, sometimes multiple times that day, and that was not a strong boundary that I set for myself, my limit for myself. So maybe you could comment below boundaries that you felt like, you know what, I need to be stronger at this. And you could comment below and let us know what you feel like you want to have for as a boundary. And also, I just wanted to let you know that when you have strong boundaries, not only are you showing yourself that you respect your needs and your desires, but you're also showing the other person how to treat you. So if you're also always just accommodating to people and you're not respecting yourself, your boundaries, your emotions, your physical boundaries, then that person thinks it's okay. So like if I had said to that friend, okay, let's hang out every day for 10 hours a day, then I'm showing her then to, without me saying like, please don't, let me have just once a week, that I'm telling her that it's okay to spend 12 hours a day with her every day, and I actually want to do that. So that's me also respecting her, to let her know that, you know what, I would be resentful if I spend that much time with you. Let's have some space. This could also be financial boundaries, like maybe a reseller is always trying to like lowball you time and time again, and you're like, well, you know what, I just feel guilty if I don't cave into this lowball offer. But you have your gas, your cost of goods, you have the time you spent sourcing, you also have the taxes, you also have shipping supplies, all of those things. You feel like, you know what, I don't even pay myself. Then you could say no to those low offers and set those boundaries and set those limits. And tell yourself, you know what? I deserve pay. I deserve my resources being paid for. I deserve um, all of those expenses being paid for because of my job. I deserve that because I work really hard. And so I'm not going to say okay to that $20 offer if I bought the item for $10, things like that. So um the more you practice boundaries, the better you'll get at it. And also, it will be also an example for your children, an example for the other person to see what boundaries looks like and how you want to be treated. So I hope this helps somebody. I just feel like maybe somebody out there is struggling with these kind of issues. And if you comment below, let me know what kind of new boundaries you have for yourself for your reselling business. And please like and share. And um, I'm on Instagram, Bunch of Styles. I'm on TikTok, Bunch of Styles. And thank you so much for spending the day with me. Good night. Bye. Bye.